Welcome to Crime Scenes and Cultures, where we seek to demystify the mysterious for public safety agencies and forensic professionals. Joined as always this week by our friend forensic archaeologist Steven Katz. Steven, how are things been going for you?
Hi, Tony. Everything's been doing really well. I've been working on some projects in Minnesota and a small ethnographic projects, a small immigrant group, and just getting ready for fall in Chicago.
Excellent. Well, as you mentioned, working with different communities, unless you've been living under a rock lately, you know that there are all these reports surrounding Haiti, and Haiti has been a hot topic of conversation in the news. The country is dealing with the trauma of violence and crime, leaving thousands of Haitians without homes, and the country's infrastructure is being threatened, leaving many to search for shelter and sanctuary in different regions around the world. And recent incidents in states like Ohio have brought communities into contact with Haitian culture. And of course, what typically comes with that are uninformed allegations of deviant behavior, quote, strange customs. And many of these customs have been alleged to be part of the spiritual tradition of Vodou. And while the religion is practiced by many in Haiti and around the world, the term is frequently used by those outside of the communities as a term of suspicion and slander. We can go as far back as the late 1800s, early 1900s, and see where the term voodoo has been used to describe many different practices that stem from African traditional religions. And newspapers would highlight the fears of this mysterious religion, claiming that those who practice it participate in ruthless blood orgies, animal cruelty, and cannibalism. Over the last 30 years, I've performed field work in Haitian communities and with practitioners of this misunderstood faith. And as with many religious cultures and spiritual traditions, what's portrayed in Hollywood as this dark, exotic tradition couldn't be further from the truth. The religion focuses on a respect for deity, love for the environment, and the wisdom of the ancestors. Agencies encountering devotees of the religion and the sacred spaces of practitioners at scenes can benefit from a basic understanding of the various traditions of Vodou. Today, we would like to introduce a friend of the show, our friend Lilith Dorsey. Lilith hails from many magical traditions, including Afro-Caribbean, Celtic, and indigenous American spiritual traditions. Their traditional education is focused on plant science, anthropology, and film at the University of Rhode Island, New York University, and the University of London. And her magical training includes numerous initiations into religions like Afro-Cuban Lukumi or Santeria, Haitian Vodou, and New Orleans Voodoo. Lilith is a voodoo priestess, and in that capacity has been doing successful magic since 1991 for patrons. She's the editor and publisher of Oshun, African Magical Quarterly. She's a filmmaker and filmed the experimental documentary Bodies of Water, Voodoo Identity and Transformation. She's also been a choreographer and performer for one of my favorites, jazz legend Dr. John and his Night Tripper Voodoo show. She has long been to providing accurate and respectful depictions of African traditional religions, and is proud to be a published Black author of such titles as Voodoo and African Traditional Religion, 55 Ways to Connect to Goddess, Love Magic, the best-selling Orishas, Goddesses, and Voodoo Queens, and the award-winning Water Magic. She asked everyone to keep a lookout for the new book, and I've reviewed this book, and it is an excellent book called Tarot Every Which Way. I am honored to have a guest of the show and a friend, Lilith Dorsey. Lilith, welcome to Crime Scenes and Cultures.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on, Tony. It's great. It's a rare pleasure that I actually get to talk with other anthropologists these days. So I truly appreciate that. I appreciate the respect and mindfulness and background that y'all have. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. We are extremely excited to have you on today because we have so many things we want to touch on. You know, when we talk about voodoo, we do a disjustice when we put voodoo into a box and say it's this one tradition. As an African traditional religion, we know we have Haitian voodoo, West African voodoo, we have Dominican voodoo, we have a New Orleans voodoo. Can you share a little bit about the religion and its various traditions?
Yeah, there are so many different forms. And I think one thing that a lot of people don't know is each individual spiritual house or temple operates autonomously. So what you're getting is not even similarities between practitioners of the same tradition in the same country. Each one is individually influenced by culture, the topography, the language of those places. You know, I recently returned from Benin, the birthplace of Vodou, and their spirituality is very similar to what we do here in New Orleans or in Haiti, but it's also different on a lot of different ways because it's on the African continent and they have different experiences than we have and they have different practices than we have. So there's a lot that goes into it. I think at its core, it's based on a respect and honoring of the elements. We respect and honor the ancestors in all those different traditions. And I think one thing, unfortunately, we share is we've all been maligned by the media and the public conception of what it is we're practicing and what it is we're doing. You know, they are all oral traditions. So we're talking about things that are handed down verbally from teacher or godparent to student. And I said it to a Babalawo friend of mine this morning, you know, when you were in kindergarten, you played telephone, stuff got really messed up. And
Sure.
people it never finished the same way it started. So we're working against that. And, you know, I think that it was secret because that was what was safe. And in a lot of ways, what we see in the news now, it's still not safe to come out publicly and say you're a Vodou or a voodoo practitioner. You're going to be met with a lot of stereotype and a lot of hatred and possibly even worse.
Okay, thank you, Liz. That was some great information. I appreciate that. Now, what I'm thinking of, mainstream media and tourist markets here in the United States and abroad would have us believe that voodoo consists of sticking pins in dolls and zombies. Are these actually parts of the religion?
Well, I mean, as far as sticking pins in dolls, you know, any expert you talk to is going to say that's not really a voodoo tradition. That was anything that went back hundreds or thousands of years because we can trace these religions back way more than just yesterday. So this is a modern thing. It was something that was, I think, from what I can see academically, based on things that were done in Celtic magic and Celtic religion with puppets and things like that. There are certain instances, especially in Nigeria, which is next to Benin, as you know, where they have the highest incidence of twins among the Yoruba people. So if there had been a twin that had passed, the twin that was still alive would make a doll for their twin that was no longer with them. And they would use that as a substitute for their twin in ceremonies, at birthday celebrations, at family gatherings, and things like that. So that's one instance of dolls. I've met a few South African Sangomas that talk about dolls for healing. So if you need to do a healing on someone and you can't have them physically present there in the room with you, which is very important and something that's been challenging now with the pandemic, you can make a doll for that person. And then you can put the healing muti or medicine or herbs or things like that on that doll in order to heal the actual physical person. So those are the only instances of dolls that I've come across. There's been a lot of, I think, people adopting dolls because that's what people expect and that's what sells. You know, capitalism drives everything, unfortunately. But no, this kind of hurtful doll with the pins is something that was not a part of voodoo. And as for zombies, we can go back to Zora Neale Hurston's, you know, I love the anthropologist, Zora Neale Hurston's field work that she did, where she talked about the formula for zombies being a certain herbal mixture, and it also contained a local fish they had that was similar to the Japanese, puffer fish or fugu that has a mild paralytic in it. So it would mimic death. It would slow breath and things like that. So if you had somebody in the community that was a child molester or just an objectionable person, what you would do is administer these things to them. It would mimic death. Their family or the community would think they were dead. And then you take that person and transport them far away. And when they came back to themselves or they woke up again, usually their mind was messed up. So they wouldn't necessarily remember their name. And you could put them into kind of basically just like field hand or just menial tasks and work. And that was sort of a social control for people who were so objectionable. It was a way that people didn't have the normal thing. Look, we don't even want to call the police today in America. So you can imagine what it was like trying to get some kind of social control against objectionable people in an island society where there were less trust and less faith in the government and the police and the ruling bodies. So that's what zombies were created for, and that's how they functioned in Haitian Vodou. And Zora Neale Hurston wrote about that, even though she didn't get credit for it, but we do see credit given to Wade Davis and his ethnobotanical research that he did out of Harvard, and then turned into the sensational Hollywood film, The Serpent and the Rainbow, which I think did not advance anything academically and probably hurt more than it helped.
Yeah, unfortunately, with these depictions we see in Hollywood, I think the American public many times loses sight that this is a rich tradition that honors ancestors. And as we speak of ancestors, what can you tell our listeners about the spirits known as the Loa?
The Loa are spirits that, originally, and it's coming less today because there are less people that are actually connected to the culture. There was a lot of, even within the culture, there's a lot of prejudice and stereotype that goes against the tradition. So originally what it was that you would have family Loa or family spirits that would protect you. And this is something we can see in lots of different indigenous cultures. So you would have these spirits, and these would be your family spirits, and you'd honor them. And then when things were difficult or you had a problem you had to solve, you would make offerings, you would make connections to them, excuse me, and then that would help you solve your situations. A lot of them are, again, elementally based. We have spirits that are attached to water. We have spirits that are attached to fire, things like that. There's a bazillion different avatars. I'd like to say that there's a short list of Loa, that there were 10 or 12, but pretty much it goes the same way as Orisha. There are as many as you can imagine, and then add one more, because more are being created every day. So what these Loa are, I don't even want to say spirits because a lot of people have a bad connotation to that, but they are sort of elemental forces that come to help us. And each individual person aligns themselves through divination, through practice, with these individual energies that help them be successful and help them be their best self.
Excellent. And so when we look at the tradition, we, much like religions like Santeria, again, these Hollywood depictions would make us think, and suspicion among those outside of the communities would push these beliefs that the religion is something where you could simply just, if you knew to pick up the right book or pick up the right doll or pick up the right materials, that you could just jump into the tradition. But in looking at different communities and spiritual houses, can you talk a little bit about the social structure of a spiritual house and perhaps how clergy is defined or looked at in the religion?
Sure. I think that one thing that people don't really understand is that clergy is not necessarily an elective decision. One of my spiritual teachers used to say that, you can only get initiated when you don't want it anymore. That anybody who's done it will laugh about that, because the point is that it really does come with a huge responsibility. It comes with a huge commitment, not only to that spiritual house, but also to the community. It's a lifelong dedication. You can't just decide to pick this up like a dilettante and then pick something else up next week. There are weekly offerings. There's daily offerings. There's a lot of time and energy and attention that goes into it. So before you become clergy in these traditions, there are some divination that has to be done. because not everybody's meant to be clergy the same way not everybody's meant to be king or president or queen or whatever it is. So many people that get that job, and only so many people are suited for that job. And in reality, it comes with just as many challenges as it comes with benefits. It's not all about the pretty clothes and the power and attention. It's about healing the people that are under your care. My godchildren really are my children. I help them with work problems. I help them with relationship problems. I help them with health problems, and they help each other as well. It's a community. It really operates like a family. And I like to explain to people that some of us don't necessarily have a family of birth, of origin that was that fantastic. So the spiritual family can sort of fill in the gaps and be that kind of positive support and give them guidance and love and protection and all of those things that should come from a family. So, but it's not for everybody. There's certainly 3:00 in the morning phone calls with people that, need help, probably from mental, spiritual guidance as well, so there's a lot. There's a lot to it. And it is a wonderful benefit, but it also comes with a lot of challenges.
I can totally understand that. I know that with spending some time with some clergy in the Afro-Cuban traditions, like Lukumi or Santeria, I would see clergy acting as counselors, therapists, doctors, pharmacists, mothers, fathers. So definitely, I'm a number of hats to be worn in that position. I can imagine.
Yeah, and it's a really deep relationship too, like you have to be willing to do things that might seem strange or unusual in order to get what you need out of the situation. I was on a panel not that long ago where somebody said, well, if your spiritual teacher tells you to do something you don't want to do, then leave that tradition. That's not the way it is with us, that there are very often difficult things. The same way that, a doctor may tell you there's some difficult things you need to do in order to heal. You may need to change your diet, or you may need to change your, work life, or any of those things. So it's not necessarily going to be easy. And you have to trust your relationship with that person, that they have your best interests at heart and they're in tune with the forces in the universe to help you align yourself to be the best human you can be.
Okay. Excellent. I'm going to change the subject just a little bit. This is in regards to first responders. When first responders are called to a residence where there's a ceremony in progress, how would you suggest they interact with the practitioners, and what should the responders be mindful of when responding?
I think they should be mindful of entering the situation with an open mind and with respect. I think they should be very careful about what they say. We recently had that situation where the woman was talking about, the pot boiling on the stove, and the first responders there saw that as an aggressive act, whereas, she was just saying this is something that's dangerous, and any negative words in the situation add to the danger in the situation. And unfortunately, she lost her life in that situation. So I think just be very mindful and respectful of what you're saying when you walk in, because words do have power, not just in the physical world, but in the spiritual world. And also be careful how you present yourself. You're not necessarily going to see things that are normal to you, but to keep an open mind about it.
Excellent.
Excellent. And to kind of add to Stephen's question there, one of the things that we always suggest is, when possible, addressing leadership at a ceremony instead of just walking into a sacred space. Ask, how essentially what would be proper and what would be safe for everyone there in order for a responder to, let's say, respond to someone who may have received an injury during a ceremony, or let's say someone all of a sudden has, some heart issues, and again, we can place this in the context of any religious structure. That interaction there is very important, and first responders can easily cut off communication in not showing respect and in not seeking culturally appropriate care for those at the scene.
Yes, that's very important. I think, like I said, there's also going to be things that they're not used to seeing. There might be some elements of, fire or smoke or things like that that are actually part of the ceremony that they wouldn't necessarily understand. But again, remember my priestess had a story where they turned the fire hoses on in the temple just because one candle in one small area had gone up, and she had to run out half naked screaming and begging them to stop. So I think, again, just not responding automatically as they would in another scenario, but realizing this is a spiritual scenario before they walk in that door.
Absolutely. I attended a ceremony there in New Orleans several years ago with Sally Glassman's organization. And in the middle of a ceremony, a lady had backed into a sort of a bank of candles in the glass, and they were on a almost pyramid type structure. And she had backed into them, and all of a sudden there was the sound of breaking glass, and there was this moment of panic, which was quickly resolved and taken care of, and there wasn't any danger there that came from it. But definitely could have been a situation where that responders might have been called, but again, the end result was everyone was safe and it was a safe situation. But, I've even I was at a Wiccan gathering several years ago in Middle Tennessee. And during this, in the circle, a lady had fallen down and twisted her ankle. Had nothing to do with the ceremony, but it just happened to occur during that. And when, EMS had to come in and they had some folks there. But again, entering that and encountering that for the first time might be a challenge for someone who's not familiar with the culture, not familiar with the community. So in the religion, what can you tell us about the use of plants and herbs in the religion?
Oh, plants and herbs are everything, really. Like I said, one of my jams is ethnobotany. Plants are healing. Plants are medicine. Plants are all around us. Plants are what's going to save the planet. So I think that plants are used for everything: spiritual sickness, actual, medical sickness. They're used for cleansing. They're used for protection. They're used for just about everything you can think of. And each plant has its own different character. And sometimes they're used for different things in different circumstances. Again, the same way they're used medically. We find out certain components do certain things under different times. I had a friend come over the other day and she had a headache, so I offered to give her an aspirin. She's like, I've never taken an aspirin. I said, well, it's natural. It's made from salicylates, from white willow bark. There's ways in which a lot of these do have practical applications within accepted traditional medicine. But we have that and so much more because we can recognize spiritual causes, spiritual things that need to be realigned, that need to be changed, that need to be helped with this plant medicine that's all around us.
There's a fantastic program that I had read about a couple of years ago going on in Boston called the Boston Healing Landscape Project. And in this program, physicians within hospitals actually had one-on-one interaction with priests from Haitian Vodou, some of the Hungans and some of the priestesses, the Mambos. They would actually learn about herbs that are used in the culture. So they would be able to, one, maybe understand where patients are coming from when they say they've taken these herbs. And two, they were able to provide, they were able to complement this medicine as far as saying, that's good. You're taking this particular plant that is helpful, and may we also suggest trying this as well. And so there was a respect for the tradition and a manner to respectfully communicate that, hey, maybe there's some other things in addition to what you're using. So there are those programs like that. And of course, one of the things that we try to promote on this show is that transcultural communication of being respectful, being able to understand that, hey, when someone arrives at a scene, whether they're working for EMS or even if it's a crime scene investigator, where there's been something happen there, to be able to successfully show respect, understand the culture that they're interacting with, and to be able to successfully communicate, how can we help you? How can we be of assistance? And so I think that's a very important area that we need to constantly promote.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned Sally Ann Glassman. She and I are both on the New Orleans National Vodou Day Committee. And as part of our event happening in April next year, we're going to have an Afro-botanical exhibit that explains some of these things that we use in the tradition, and hopefully will further the education of the general public about how some of these traditional medicines have been used.
Fantastic. I definitely will have to find myself in New Orleans in April then.
Yeah, please
next
do.
year. That's awesome. Stephen, did you have any more questions for Lilith? Well, we could talk all day, but I know our time is kind of short here today.
I was interested in that ethnobotanical stuff, but I think how I'm going to take care of that is just to show up in April, because New Orleans in April is going to be a good time.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. We're going to have a huge ceremony. I'm in charge of the Vodou colloquium. We're going to be bringing over a lot of Vodou priests from Benin. We're going to have a lot of Vodou priests and scholars from around the world. So it's going to be amazing.
All right. Is it going to be like near Congo Square, or where exactly do you know
Our
yet?
final ritual is in Congo Square.
Excellent.
So, yes.
Awesome. Lilith, is there anything we want? First and foremost, thank you for coming today, and I always appreciate the work you do. And is there anything that you would like to share in closing with our listeners?
I think I would just like to share that, there's been all of this negative press about, using animals or sacrifice, and it's such a taboo. And I just want people, in addition to keeping an open mind, realizing that for us, this is our spiritual medicine. If there is any sacrifice taking place, it's never done lightly. It's never done just willy-nilly. It's always done respectfully. It's also always done from a place of, if this is something that I need to give that spiritual energy for, I'd be willing to give my own life for it. So when I teach my workshops and stuff, I ask people to think that if your loved one, your grandmother, your partner, your child had a terminal illness and the doctor told you needed this medicine from a chicken gizzard in order to cure their terminal disease, would you use that medicine? And most people 100% of the time say yes. So for us, it's the same thing. And if you look at the efficiency of it, very often spiritual solutions do heal some serious illnesses. So just keep an open mind about it and realize we're not doing it because we're cruel, evil people. We're doing it because it's an ancient system of spiritual practice that does work.
Absolutely. I always encourage my students to understand that in an African traditional context, you may find that in a community where a family, the only thing they have to their name is a goat or a chicken, and let's say something happens and their child gets sick, or a storm comes through and batters the community and somehow they're saved out of it, what is the most valuable thing that you might be able to give that particular deity? And what if it's that goat that's provided sustenance? What if it's that chicken that's provided sustenance? And in that context, sacrifice and offering is not this just barbaric act of cruelty that doesn't have a specific nomenclature in how it's carried out. The animals are respected and treated with respect, and they're very valuable. So it's very far away from a call that a police department might get that a 17-year-old is killing a cat in a cemetery. Very, very different thing. So Stephen, do you have any final comments for Lilith?
No, I'm good. I just want to thank her again for joining us on the episode and for sharing her knowledge and experiences about this often misunderstood religion with our listeners.
Lilith, how can our listeners find you?
Oh, well, they can find me on my website, lilithdorsey.com. They can find me all over social media. Yeah, all my stuff is up there. There's information about New Orleans National Vodou Day online and on all the social media platforms as well. So thank you very much for having me on. It was a delight, and I'm excited.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate your work you're doing to educate the public about the traditions. And you're always invited here. And we appreciate you coming with us today. You've been listening to Crime Scenes and Cultures, where we seek to demystify the mysterious, and we hope you have a great day until next time.